Hello friends, we do the poem Flea now. Already we have studied that this is an insect that has stung the poet first and then the girl, and in the body of this flea the two bloods are mingled. And then he convinces the girl and says that what has happened, the mingling of the blood, cannot be called a sin, nor shame, nor loss of chastity. And then he also says that happy is this flea because it was able to take from you even before it could woo you to a reconciliation. And then says that the body of this, how happy is this flea? It is swollen now because our two bloods are inside it, and that gives the flea an extra happiness, the swelling and pampering. And then says, this is all that I want to do. At this, the girl is dramatically moved to kill the flea. So the poet asks him to stay, on the argument that now this flea is not an ordinary flea. There are 3 lives existing in it, therefore it should be spared. For first reason, that in this they are almost, and in fact certainly, they are married. And then he says that in this body of the flea, you and I are coexisting, and heightens the idea with the two successively placed conceits, where he says that, compares it with the marriage bed and the marriage temple, and then says that despite all the grudges from the parents and the girl, we are the placing of a universal fact. I told you in the beginning of the poem that is an are and was and were always go and am, always go on to place a universal fact, and said that in this we are cloistered, we are united together in these living walls of jet. So you may kill that part which is me, but please do not kill that part which is you as well. And of course, do not commit the crime, the heinous crime of destroying this place of worship. Without discrimination, it is allowed for our fusion. But the girl does it. The drama continues. The girl kills it and says, cruel and sudden, hast thou since purpled thy nail in blood of innocence? He rebuffs the girl and says that you have been unnecessarily and undesirably and very cruel, and so suddenly you killed this creature without trying to see the implications of this. Hast thou since purpled thy nail? So he calls the blood purple. The color purple always is indicative of triumph. So the girl, after having killed, is in fact triumphing with the idea that the creature that could have borne testimony to the marriage is now killed. So he says, you have purpled thy nail. You are feeling triumphant, but then your triumph is at the cost of blood of innocence. You have killed an innocent creature. Wherein could this flea guilty be? Except in that drop which it sucked from thee. So what do you think is the guilt of this poor creature for which you have killed it? I do not feel bad for it having sucked from me, but you are taking it as a crime. I think the only reason which you might think as a legitimate cause for killing this flea could be the drop which it sucked from the, and for one drop you killed the whole flea. So even here, with the two questions, the rhetoric the employed here is only supporting the idea of the poet that this has been an act of killing an innocent creature. This has been an act which is unjustified, cruel, and sudden. No kind of triumph be entertained, because this has not been killing of a killer, but this has been a killing of an innocence. And we can plainly see that actually the flea was innocent. It did not know that an argument has gone between the two, and it just intrude only to pay back for all that with his own life. But the girl is still triumphant. Yet thou triumph, and say that thou find not thyself, nor me, the weaker now. You are saying that after this, all whatever has happened, I don't feel any weakness. It is true. The poet says, yes, it is true. I know. For the small drop of blood which this creature sucked from you, do we really feel weak when any insect stings us? No, it might give you an irritation, which of course the flea induced into the girl. She was irritated, but it was true that it caused no harm, it caused no weakness. Then learn how false fears be. He says, you are only nourishing very false fears of about it being a sin or a shame or loss of maidenhood. All these fears are rootless. They are just false fears. And then after giving this big argument of first citing that the flea has taken the blood, that it has allowed for the fusion of the blood, and that the flea is now become a marriage bed and a marriage temple, and that the killing of the flea would be like a murder and a suicide and a sacrilege, and that it has caused none of them any weakness. Does the poet in the last two lines come only to advocate his pre-nourished idea that only just so much honor when thou yieldest to me will waste? Only that much of honor will waste, as this flea's death took life from thee. The flea has died now, and that droplet of blood which was in the flea and which came from the girl, only that much of honor. How insignificant. How much should the flea have been able to suck from her? So he says only this much. Don't attach false fears towards the physical love which I am requesting from you. Only that much will waste. So we see that this poem is in fact a very unconventional method, with the very unconventional example of the flea, of the occasion of the flea having stung both of them, that John Donne employs to establish his own conception of the need for physical love. It becomes very hard for us, very difficult for us to believe that this is the very man who writes down the poem Canonization, which the language of paradox of which poem is phenomenal, where he says that people could be looking at the physical love that might going on in the between two people, the idea of love which might be nourished by two people, but that love which is true always exists in the mind or in the soul, and that body has nothing to do with it. So John Donne is a special poet who can argue the cause of physical love as much emphatically and with as much conviction as he does the idea of platonic love, which we shall do next. That is all for today. Thank you.